Greetings, beloveds. This is Amy. It's been a long time since I have made a video. Some of you may have noticed that I have changed my YouTube handle, channel name. It is now Peregrine Alchemy by Amy. In the last video I made, I talked about how I was sort of going into learning mode so that I could especially learn about biogeometry. And I have done a lot of that, and it's been great and wonderful and eye-opening. And not only have I learned about biogeometry, but I've also learned how to use astrology to identify certain things that, first of all, might be a little bit off, a little bit wrong, or I'll talk a little bit more about how we could describe that in a minute, as well as how to remedy those things. But before I get into that, I want to talk about how it has helped me have a paradigm shift, essentially, to see, not to put it too dramatically, but what is wrong with the world? What is it that is the source of so many of the problems that we are having? And when I say that, I'm talking about everything from our physical health to our mental health, to our emotional health, and our spiritual health. There is a sort of common denominator in what has just disconnected us, I would say, is probably the best word to use here. Disconnected us from our ability to be healthy in all of those ways, and even to notice what's wrong exactly, to fully recognize and identify the cause of these maladies, these various kinds of maladies. And it really comes down to electricity. Now, don't get me wrong. I am obviously using electricity right now to make this video to try to make it look good, make myself look good. I still use electricity all day long, all night long. I'm not disconnecting my electricity fully at any time. But by connecting with the biogeometry community, I came across a book that I would like to share with you. It's called The Invisible Rainbow, A History of Electricity and Life by Arthur Firstenberg. And I know I've got a little bit of blur going on. That's actually intentional, but you can at least see that, hopefully read it as much as you need to. The Invisible Rainbow, A History of Electricity and Life by Arthur Firstenberg. So this book goes back in history to when electricity first started being more widely used. And he talks about how it was initially thought to maybe be able to heal people of certain things. But what we've collectively forgotten is that there were a lot of really experiments gone wrong, essentially, during that time. And they became increasingly disastrous and dangerous as the amount of electricity being used was increased over the years. It's interesting to me that I believe the date was around 1869 when the first sort of distribution or wider use of electricity began. And this was also around the time that Charles Darwin wrote, Survival of the Species, I think it was, came up with the theory of survival of the fittest or evolution, the theory of evolution. I'm sorry, I'm probably getting the term wrong slightly. Survival of the fittest, evolution, Origin of the Species, I believe, is the actual name of his book. So, our Charles Darwin, I've heard, has since he wrote that book, became a little bit more skeptical, a little bit more doubtful about survival of the fittest as the best way to capture the paradigm. And yet, with the arrival of electricity, we had a lot of things becoming more common that weren't necessarily initially tied to the prevalence and the use of electricity. And that included everything from cancer, diabetes, these physical sorts of maladies, to mental and emotional maladies like anxiety. I don't think anybody had ever heard of ADHD or ADD before that time. If they happened, they were not only dealt with a different way, but just not as bad, not in such a way that they, were seen as so much of a hindrance in someone's life. But he makes a very good case to say that it's no accident, that the increasing prevalence of electricity very likely caused these things. Now, we can't go back in time. We can't absolutely prove it in an experiment very easily, especially since you can scarcely get away from electricity. It's probably used in most of the experiments done these days. So it's very difficult to have a finite, controlled environment in which to do those kinds of experiments and in which to get a very clear result that we can understand and know for sure is what's happening. So let's talk a little bit about where we go from here without getting too far into this. You're welcome to, of course, read this book, listen to it. It's on Audible as well, on an audiobook version. So you can learn for yourself what he talks about. Biogeometry also goes into a science called radiesthesia, which is the physics of quality, essentially, a way to discern the physics of quality. And that is in contrast to quantity. So much of what we talk about in science these days has to do with quantities, quantification of certain things. And we've all but forgotten the importance of the quality of things. Radiesthesia helps connect us with that quality again. And I'm not going to be able to teach you that. I'm sworn basically not to, as a result of the agreement I signed to take the biogeometry classes. I certainly would love to recommend those to you, not only biogeometry classes, but also there are additional on-demand, less expensive classes offered by Dr. Robert Gilbert, who is the teacher that I took biogeometry classes from. His website is vesica.org, and it gets into some of those on-demand classes, how you can measure the quality, the different qualities of different things, and your own personal wavelength is, I believe, one of the classes, which also helps you to see which qualities you are in need of, or which qualities in particular that you aren't doing so well with right now. And qualities can be perceived with color. And then there are different things that resonate with those colors or those quantities, or excuse me, qualities, that can be seen by identifying them as resonating with a certain color, if that makes sense. I don't want to get too far into it, but to give you some idea of what I'm talking about, that's one of the ways of identifying the quality of things, which makes it very interesting that this book is called The Invisible Rainbow, because it kind of alludes to that connection with the spectrum of color. So let's see where to go from here. We learn in the course that there is a specific color quality that is called vertical negative green. And there's also a horizontal negative green, but the vertical one in particular tends to be harmful. And it also tends to associate itself with many, if not most, electrical devices and electrical currents. So essentially, the problem that biogeometry says and shows us with the prevalence of electricity is the fact that it was never designed to support the quality of life. And vertical negative green, not always, excuse me, I don't want to make gross generalizations, but often vertical negative green results in the quality associated with death, as opposed to life. There is a quality for life. There are many different qualities that support life, and there's one in particular that is needed by all of us. And often in biogeometry, they refer to it as BG3. It can also be referred to as the quality of gold, which is why I renamed my channel Peregrine Alchemy by Amy. And I do believe that many ancient alchemists essentially were looking to achieve the quality of gold with alchemy as opposed to physical gold. So, how do we deal with electricity while still using it in our lives, as we pretty much must? All of us need to use electricity just to get by in today's world. First of all, I would love to encourage you all to take a look at your bedroom. A lot of us are using different electronic devices to help us sleep. I mean, even just our alarm clocks often can be, an electrical device of some kind. Often they are. See what you can do in your bedroom to unplug as many things from the wall as you can, because I have found that things plugged into the wall tend to amplify that vertical negative green quality from the electricity, the electrical conduits and circuits that are going through our walls, and bring them out into our bodies more than we should, more than is good for us. And some of you may have heard of something called dirty electricity, which is not associated with biogeometry. I had heard of this as I was looking into getting solar panels last year and decided not to. Not going to talk about that right now, but I heard about something called the green wave. This is supposed to help regulate electrical spikes in electrical vibrations and frequencies. However, I don't want to get into any more detail about this. This was quite expensive. It was over $100 for a pair of these. And I found that these were more detrimental. I'm sorry to say this, but I measured it after I put it into the wall by my bed, and it was worse than it was before or without it. And the way I measured it, if you're interested in getting something like this, is with this meter, EMF meter. This one is a GQ brand EMF 390. You can see that. And it uses hardly any electricity. I got it many months ago, and it's still at 100% battery. So you just put this on your various electrical devices and you see how bad it is. So as you can see right now, it's less than 1, it's normal. However, if I put it on my computer right here, it spikes up to 5.6 and probably even higher if I leave it on here a little bit longer or put it in certain places. I found that the displays, electric displays, often have the highest amount. There you can see that the spike peak was at 18.2 at one point when I put it on my computer here. So this will help you identify the places with the highest amount of electricity and the devices with the highest amount of electricity or EMFs electromagnetic frequencies so that you can try to avoid them, especially when sleeping. You know, we spend a lot of time in our beds trying to sleep. It's best if we can try to do it away as much as possible. Just reduce, you know, it's not going to be 100%, but reduce the amount of exposure of our bodies to electricity and EMFs while we sleep, at least. So battery operated stuff is better. If you can get a battery operated clock, that's great. I actually have an old cell phone, so it's no longer connected to, you know, 5G or um, it's not even connected to Wi-Fi. I've just got it used. I'm basically just using it as a clock, as an alarm clock. And I also have one or two recordings saved, you know, downloaded onto the phone so that all I really ever have to do is charge the battery. I don't ever connect it for service or for Wi-Fi or anything like that anymore. So that has a fairly low amount of EMF for me to have near my bed to wake me up as needed. What else? I want to talk to you about the things that are easiest to do first, and then get into some of the things that are better. Okay, let's talk about crystals. This is indigo gabbro. I've been getting a whole bunch of this progressively throughout the last year. I think I had a video, at least one video, where I showed you some indigo gabbro. It's also called mystic merlinite. This is one of the best crystals for mitigating EMF. So if you're going to try to use orgonite, I know orgonite often uses different kinds of crystals. I would highly recommend getting indigo gabbro in there. You can use other things as well. All crystals do work, are legitimate, valid, wonderful tools. However, the thing that we have to do with all crystals, even indigo gabbro, which is the most resilient, is we need to clean them regularly. And if you're going to use this, a crystal of any kind, daily, clean it daily, at least once a day. There are some where you may not be using them as intensely, that maybe you can clean once a week, even less intensely, maybe you can clean them once a month. I strongly recommend, you know, just running them under water from the faucet. Sometimes I say something to go with that, like water cleanse and clean by the water blessed be, but you don't even have to do that. Sometimes I just run it under water and that's enough. So I at least clean them at the full moons, like once a month during close to the full moon, maybe right before the full moon, because the energy starts to get amplified as we come closer to full moons. Okay, this video is getting long, but I have a lot to share. So do that with any crystals, any orgonite. I don't really recommend pyramids anymore because usually they're not actually designed as well as they need to be according to biogeometry. So I would encourage you to stay away from pyramids unless or until you take a biogeometry class. Just stick with regular crystals, either raw crystals or polished crystals, but I would recommend maybe not doing the pyramid type crystals unless you can learn more about biogeometry and learn how to correct those. Okay, I think we're at the point where I'd like to share. Oh, there's one more thing. Electricity, our bodies use electricity. So some of you may have been thinking of this already, but our nervous systems are designed to conduct electricity. However, that electricity has life force in it. It's good for us. And yet it makes us more vulnerable to the electricity that's outside our bodies. Sorry if you can hear my dog barking. I might have to go here soon, but we need more electrolytes. In addition to hydrating ourselves, vertical negative green and electricity can dehydrate us, and they can also use up electrolytes. So trace minerals, I love the fulvic acid. There's also this supplement called, it's from Seeking Health Energy Nutrients. And these little lozenges are great. I even just take a little piece off of them. So I've made this one last really long to help with our electrolytes. Now, biogeometry. You can get certain biogeometry tools without taking a class. I would be happy to make more videos on how to use them because it's not always super clear. I have all my pendants from biogeometry. This is one of the main ones that was used to help the folks, and I think initially in Hamburg, Switzerland, who were dealing with a very difficult situation with a telecommunication tower. There are also biosignatures, of which there are some pendants like this one. This one's for electrosmog in particular and can help with headaches. And then the L90 pendant helps to keep these clear longer. Without going into too much detail about those, they also come with a clearing plate, which has a vesica symbol on it, lots of different symbols on it, and these are etched. So they're very effective. There's been a lot of research that's gone into the design of these to clear these. These clearing plates can also be used to clear crystals if you don't want to necessarily, run them underwater. It's especially great for metal since you don't always want to run metal underwater. It can rust it potentially. There are also stickers that you can put on your cell phones. Here is my biogeometry sticker, I guess you can call it. There we go. Let's try this to get it a little more focused. So that one has some biosignatures on it too, but you also need to put it on the clearing plate for, I think, up to maybe 5 to 10 minutes every day to clear it. Try not to leave it on any of these things on there for too long. There are these items that you can put on your car dashboard as well. I'm going to give this one away as a gift. It has a lot of tiny little biosignatures on it. There are L stickers. There are L90 stickers, kind of like the pendant I just showed you, for your Wi-Fi devices, wireless devices. And these are stickers so that you can peel off the back and stick them on. And there are electrical panel strips like this. You can put on electrical panels, obviously, kind of right in the middle of the panel. You do have to get adhesive tabs to put these on with. And essentially what all of these things do, I actually use these everywhere. These are only about $10 each. You can get 5, I think, in a set. And I have one on my computer right here. They're great for helping to adjust and correct the quality of our electronics to actually support life force rather than to support the vertical negative green, which I would almost call the death force. I don't want to scare you. It's not like we're going to do any worse necessarily with all of these electronics than we have already. But if you're having problems, I'm hopeful that these things can help you. Help you to feel better. You'll notice that the energy of, this is also an indigo gabbro bracelet that I have here, which you can find online. During the full moons, the energy of our electronics and our electricity will be amplified. So these corrections are especially important to use during the full moon. And even more amplification happens when we have eclipses, both lunar and solar eclipses. Doesn't matter if it's a partial eclipse, doesn't matter if it's not visible where you are. We just had a lunar and solar eclipse in September. And I will be honest with you, I had a very rough time, even with all of the corrections I've been putting in my home, all over everywhere. They kind of kicked my butt. So there is a lot of learning that we still all need to do to try to help mitigate the effects of the combination of these celestial events with electricity. So I think that's probably a good enough introduction for now. I would love to hear from any of you in the comments if you have questions, if you have things you'd like me to talk about more. I hope you all benefited from this, and I look forward to hopefully talking to you again soon. Namaste, beloveds.